On this Friday. It was wonderful to have rain yesterday. It's wonderful to have the sunshine today. And it's wonderful to hear from the summer cross-cultural groups. We have today two groups that did the cross-cultural in the local context, this region, including DC and into West Virginia and the area. A lot of cultural diversity to be engaged right here at home. As soon as they're finished, we'll hear from the Costa Rica group, and looking forward to hearing from both groups. So first of all, local context, if you'd come, the program is yours.
Okay, I guess this is on. Oh, it is. Hello, my name is Christy Wirtz. I am a senior nursing student, and I'm going to talk about what we did here locally in Harrisonburg.
And I'm Valerie Rotifer. I'm a junior nursing student, and I'm going to be talking about on the weekend that we went up to DC.
I guess the thing's not on anymore. So here in Harrisonburg, we learned about some things that we have locally and about the history of Harrisonburg. One of the things that we got to do was meet a lovely lady named Doris Harper Allen, who actually wrote a book about her experiences as a child living in the area that used to be known as Newtown, which is where all of the African American families had settled in Harrisonburg. So we got to meet her, and she took us on a tour of what used to be known as Newtown. We went to several different churches that were prominent in that area, and met some different people as well. Trying to think of other things that we did. We also had dinner with some of those people that evening when we did that. What else did we do?
We went to all the local churches off of Kelly Street.
Oh yes, we did go on Kelly Street and all of that. Kelly Street, as well as Devon, I think, has a really bad known rap in that area. And so it was neat to actually go there and see those actual people and what goes on Kelly Street. A lot of people think of it as a high crime rate area, but we were actually able to go there and see that, people aren't walking around creating all kinds of crime and things. We also went to, right now I'm not remembering what it's called, the Lucy Sims building over by the Big Blue Water Tower. We were able to go there. That used to be the high school, and there was actually Doris's niece who runs the program there. We were able to go there and see what they do in the community as well, which they do provide meals and some parenting classes and things for the community. We also went to an art gallery that's in Harrisonburg that is free to go to, which I never even knew existed until this local experience. We were able to go there and see different art displays from different people and speak to the owner and learn some more about that kind of stuff, just art in general, and we did some poetry and things like that as well. I think the group that went to DC did not do this, but I know the other half of our group went to the mosque. Is that correct? The mosque, which is where the people of the Islamic faith go to worship Allah. So they did that experience. And then our group went to DC, and that's what Val's going to talk about.
So how many of you all, I know a majority of the groups that go to EMU, you go overseas. So how many of you think that we got to have a fulfilling and enriching experience just going to DC? Raise your hand. Okay, you're split about half. Well, I will say that it was really neat to see our next door going up to DC. Everybody thinks of DC, think of the White House, you think of the Pentagon, you think of, the Smithsonian and all of those, little centralized section of the tourist area. And so when you think of DC, that's what you think of. But the area that we went out to, we were out in the outskirts, and we actually stayed at the Washington Scholarship House that sometimes our students go for a full semester. And so we got to stay there. And on our first night there, we rode the metro. Some of us, that was a new experience for us. We rode the metro and we went to Union Station. And we got to explore around, just not really do too much as far as learning about the community, but got to, just look at the area that we were at. The next day, we went over to what is called the MCC building, which is the Mennonite Central Committee office. In that office, they work with Congress and Senate on some of the immigration issues that they deal with up there. After we got done with that, that was a really telling experience on, the perspective of the immigrant's viewpoint. We split up into a small group, and some of us went to Mount Pleasant. My group, we went to Chinatown. Another group went to U Street. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about mine because I can say more about it. When we went to Chinatown, that was really neat. That was the first time that a lot of us had went to a Chinatown. And the very first thing that we noticed when we got off the metro, we hear yelling and shouting, and we got to witness a radical group. And the radical group was a black extremist group doing the opposite of what we know as the KKK and hating against whites. So that was really kind of like a pullback moment, like, wow, because, we don't see that stuff around here. The next day, we went to what is called the family place, and that's where refugees that come in, all of them come in and, they don't know English, they have no means of education, and here they have these families, and it's like, what do we do? And so they help, they have a room for the children, so if they have young children, they get to, play, and also help prepare those kids for when they go into school, and that was really, really neat to see. Also, we had a local lady called Dr. Katina Thomas. She was from the area that we was at, and it was really interesting to hear her story of growing up and how gentrification has happened over time and pretty much pushing everybody, that was born and raised there kind of out and, making it to where and they can't afford their homes anymore, or they don't have a choice. They sell it off and build up all these bigger buildings, and it was just really interesting perspective from a local person. We also, that night, several of us got to go to Duke Ellington School of the Arts. Not all of us, it was an optional experience. Everybody else kind of got to do their own thing, but those of us that went, we went with Deanna. A friend of her has a daughter that actually participates in what it was when you think of a high school doing a dance production, you think high school, these are professionals, and it was amazing how one group in particular had the African dress and the drums, and it was just phenomenal. I think everybody should go to it. We also go to Georgetown and look around the area and see some of the original sidewalks and streets and just that town. And then the very last thing that we got to do before we came home is we got to go to a Catholic church, and that was interesting to just experience, the Catholic faith. So even though we went local, we got to see a lot of stuff in the 4.5 days that we were there, and it was a very enriching experience, not only for seeing them, but also us as a group. I mean, majority of our group was nursing students, but we didn't become friends until, went to that trip. And I think all of us as a group, we ended up being a tight-knit group just because we got to do this locally.
Yeah.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? My name is Anna, and I'm going to start off sharing a little bit about our Nicaraguan experience. As you can imagine, the morning we left for Nicaragua and Costa Rica, we were anxious, excited, and nervous all at the same time. For many of us, this was our first experience going out of the States, but for some of us, it was even our first experience flying. But by the time we made it to Nicaragua, we were just ready to be there. We stayed in Managua, which is the capital of Nicaragua, for 4 days. We stayed at a hostel called Quinta Shalom. But we also had the opportunity to explore to Masaya and Granada. In Masaya, we hiked the Masaya volcano and toured a bat cave. We also braved the Masaya markets, where we learned to navigate through all of the vendors, eat authentic Nicaraguan food, and test our Spanish. I remember we were on the bus leaving the markets, and Roger actually asked us to do a buddy check. And at that point, we realized that Grayson and Zach did not make it on the bus. Like I said, the markets were crazy.
Hi, I'm Rachel Sturm. I'm going to talk also about our experience in Nicaragua. Next few days, we ventured to the orphanage of Fortress of Hope. At this point, it was a bit of a culture shock with the language barrier, but these kids were always willing to learn. They're like playing with you. We got to play soccer, and during that time, we ordered pizza for them. Now, they loved it. Some of these kids never had pizza in their life, and the 6-year-old had 6 pieces of pizza. Now, I can't even eat that much. And after that, the new little friends invited us to go along to the longest church service of our lives. Now, you think an hour is long. This church service was 3.5 hours. But it was very eye-opening. The church service of like singing and the gospel, it was like a concert. They're raising the roof. Then after this, we ventured off to Costa Rica.
All right, my name's Grayson Mass. I'll be talking about our time in San Jose. So when we first got to San Jose, it was a lot different than where we had been in earlier places in our trip. We stayed in a nicer hotel, which was a big change from the Maleque tribe that we had just spent a significant amount of time in. But it was also a change in climate too, because San Jose was in more of the highland regions of Costa Rica, meaning that it was cooler, so that was nice. So when we got there, we dropped our stuff off in the hotel and walked across the street to this small turfed over soccer field, which was a lot of fun for the group. I think that soccer was something that allowed us to connect not only to locals in Costa Rica or just Costa Ricans in general, but also it allowed our group to get closer and to bond together. So.
Hi, I'm Zach. Whoa. To stick with the soccer topic, I think it was the first morning we were in San Jose, we played pickup soccer for a good 2 hours at a local park. And there was also a lot of rollerblading. Turns out that's like an actual sport with tracks. I didn't know that. So it was pretty cool. But So one of the things I noticed about the culture of Costa Rica while we were playing pickup was no one really cared if you knew anyone. You just kind of showed up and you played for like hours, and it was just a lot of fun. And this 60-year-old man actually joined us, and he was our right back for a little bit. And the opposing team had a counterattack, and we were like looking around. We were like, "Where's our right back?" And we look over to the side of the field, and he's going to the bathroom on a tree in the middle of this park with like tons of people in it. We were just like, "Oh, okay." As soon as he was done, ran back on the field, made a tackle. It was like, good work. But yeah, so it was a lot of fun.
I'm Jared. One of the last things we did in San Jose, and was probably one of the highlights of San Jose for a lot of people, and one of the highlights for everyone on the trip, was going to a professional soccer game in San Jose between La Liga and Saprissa, which are the two biggest teams in Costa Rica, and they're bitter rivals. If you think of like Real Madrid and Barcelona, it's a smaller version of that. Driving to the game, it was quite an experience. The Saprissa bus actually passed us on the way, so that was really cool. We looked out the window like, oh, there's the other team. And as you can expect, the traffic got a little heavier as we got closer to the stadium. Just cars everywhere, and then once we finally got out, I don't even remember how far away we were from the stadium. It wasn't too far. But there was people selling jerseys and scarves and basically anything Liga you could buy. And there was just tons of people. It was really crowded, and it was a little stressful. But once we got into the stadium, the environment was incredible. It's not like anything I've ever witnessed here at a soccer game. And yeah, it was just a ton of fun. Our seats were right behind the goal. When Liga won 2-0, both goals, the crowd just erupted. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Braden. As Grayson said before we got to San Jose, we went to a place called the Maleque Indian Reserve. And, well, as he said, it was a big contrast getting into a nice hotel from the Maleque Indian Reserve. When you enter there, you have to walk up probably about 1.5 miles straight up this hill to get to the top of where we ate all of our meals. And we learned a lot about the culture of the indigenous people of Costa Rica. We learned how to say welcome in their native language, which is kapi kapi. And we learned a lot about how their natural medicines, the things they find from the jungle, all of their food, things like that. We also got to dance with them last night in one of their tribal ceremonies. So that was definitely a cultural experience. One of my favorite things from there was how Johnny described his bed as a block of wood. So that was really, really entertaining. Well, and yeah, so that's when we also got to play a soccer game with the local people at the reserve, which was interesting because they ended up being 11-on-20. So that was not the greatest numbers, but we managed.
All right, my name is Joseph Spriggs. I'm going to talk a little bit about San Marcos, which was a small farming town that we visited. We all ended up staying with families there. And you always hear about like the generosity of people in other countries and even around the United States, but it's another thing to actually experience it. And the house I was staying in, we had 6 college boys, which if any of y'all are mothers out there, you understand how much a college boy can eat. And every day she'd have just an endless amount of food for us, and we never went hungry. And it was some of the best food I ever had. I'd never heard of pineapple bread before, but I could eat that every day of my life.
I'm Angelia, or as everybody knows me as Jelly. Also in San Marcos, we got to stay with a family, and that's, I think, where I came close with a couple of my friends on this trip, but also just because our family didn't know a lick of English. All she knew how to say was hi, goodbye, and that was it. She couldn't know our names. She didn't know what we needed to ask her, but every morning she would wake us up, and we would say, 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock. It'd be 5 o'clock. Get up, get up. Yes, Mom. So we would wake up, there would be food on the table, rice and beans every day. Every day for the 3 meals that we ate, there was rice and beans there. They were either together or separate, but we got to meet We had families, we had little brothers, little sisters, and the one thing that I'll remember is a little girl named Gypsy. We got there and everybody was like, "That girl has two different colored eyes." I said, "No, she doesn't." This little girl had a blue eye and a brown eye, and she was the most beautifulest little girl we've ever seen. And she stayed with us like all day, all night. We played soccer with her and her friends, but probably with the house families is probably where like our friendships really came together.
Hi, I'm Seth Suttles. I'm going to talk about Dominical, which is where we went after, I guess, San Marcos. I'm going to talk a little bit about Billy Kingsley, which he was our tour guide. So he's actually a guy from Harrisonburg. He owns something called Upper 90, which was a soccer store here in Harrisonburg. And just about, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, he left and moved down to Costa Rica. He's also a local referee, so anybody that played soccer around here most likely had him as a referee at some time. So he moved to Costa Rica. He built a really nice house up on kind of a hill about 15 minutes away from Dominical and Uvita. And he owns his own tour guide business now, which is pretty sweet. So he normally takes, I guess, soccer teams, collegiate soccer teams around. So that was us. And then right after us, I think they had a team coming in from Elon University. So he's just a really funny guy. And then Johnny's going to tell a little bit about what he taught us.
So in Dominical, it's basically a huge surfer town. And everyone learned pretty much how to surf there. But he actually took Seth and I and Tyler Moss out the day before everybody else. Sorry, guys. And we learned how to surf a little bit before them. So quickly we learned that we need to wear a shirt when you surf because the wax on your board is pretty rough on your chest. But I knew Seth was having a good time when he had bloody nipples and he was still smiling, so. But it was a great time. It's pretty liberating to surf and feel the waves. So it's a good freeing feeling of all the stress that you're going through the day. And yeah, you get up early in the morning and you go surf for a while and you wait for the next tide.
The last place we went was the Ossa Peninsula, and specifically it was called Poor Man's Paradise. It was a resort, and to get to this resort, we had to board 2 boats that took us down the river, and they took us out into the Pacific Ocean. And the first thing we saw was this big beach, but there's no dock, and so they just backed up the boat as close as they could, and then we stepped out in the water and walked back on. And then we watched them take the boat back out, and it had all of our stuff in it. And so they took the boat at full speed towards the beach, and then they just pulled up the rudder and went straight up onto the beach from there. And so then they unloaded everything from there. And so this place, it could only be reached by water, and it was a bunch of little houses that we stayed in. And one of the cool things that a lot of us did, just for when we were hanging out in the afternoon, it was this game called Beach to Whale. So the waves were extremely turbulent. They were very, you wouldn't see them, but then right at the shore they just got really, really big all of a sudden, and it was really hard to escape them if you were too close to the water as it was rushing out. And so we'd all sit in the water and just let it wash us out, and then it would smash you around in the water, and then it would just wash you right back up on the beach. And so I think some of us would spend about a good 2 to 3 hours just doing that for the afternoon. It's a good relaxing time. And so after that, it was just offshore was this island called Kenyo Island, and they took us out to go snorkeling there. We saw manta ray, lots of fish, and lots of coral, and it was just a cool experience to snorkel, which is, I've never done it before, but it took me a while to get used to breathing, and then every once in a while I'd get the snorkel under the water and breathe in the water, so that was interesting. And one of the other things that about most of the group did, some group went fishing, but we went on a nature hike in Corcovado National Park, where we saw just tons and tons of different animals. And they have lots of national parks in Costa Rica. They try and protect a lot of their land. And so there we saw ruby macaws. What are they called? Scarlet macaws. Sorry, which are really rare. They're the classic jungle bird that you see that has all tons red, green, blue, yellow, lots of colors. We were walking along the beach and. They mate for life, which is one of the interesting facts about them. And we just happened to see them walking back on the beach at the very end of our trip. We also saw different kinds of monkeys, leafcutter ants, coatis, which are like raccoons, sort of, just with long tails. Lots of lizards. There were tapir tracks, and tapir are kind of like small, like three-toed horses. And then there were more hermit crabs than you can imagine. Like the beaches just looked like they were moving because there were just hermit crabs everywhere.
I'm Matthew Overacker, and I'm going to talk to you about the fishing trip and the sea turtle reserve that we went to. So actually, 5 or 6 of us went on a fishing trip out deep into the Pacific, and so it was pretty boring, to be honest. Didn't really see much that day. We caught 2 wahoo and a shark. It was quite impressive, Joe. Good job. But we did, when we were just cruising around, we did actually see a few sea turtles starting to make their way towards shore. And a few of us got pretty badly sunburned, and that was fun to battle with the rest of the trip. And the Sea Turtle Reserve, we one day took a boat to a few miles upshore and helped a group prepare for the sea turtles coming in. When we went down there, it was the right time to. It was getting ready to be their mating season or whatever. They would bring the eggs onto the beach, and so we basically built sandbags and a clean water reserve area to nurse the eggs so that the guy there could put the sea turtles back into the ocean and increase the population. Pura vida.
If you can stay after Friday announcements, there will be about a 10-minute video that highlights the fun times from the Costa Rica trip. And the slides from the local context group showed at the beginning, but we could show those again if anyone's still here after the video. We could do that for you. Friday announcements.